So to get into the political fallout after this story coming out of Montréal-Nord, I'm joined today by Ricardo Lamour. Ricardo is an artist, a human rights activist whose work focuses on anti-racism. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And so you are also a columnist for Pivot. And in your most recent column, you draw a link between this case coming out of Montréal-Nord, the shooting death of Nouran Rezai by Longueuil police, and the investigation into the guillotine brought to the May Day protest, where a papier-mâché figure resembling Labor Minister Jean Boulet was decapitated. And you write in that column, lorsque l'État décrète qu'un dossier est urgent, la machine s'active. À l'inverse, lorsqu'il décide qu'une situation peut attendre, les semaines deviennent des années. Gouverner, ce n'est pas seulement décider quoi faire, c'est aussi décider quand agir. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
It's in a nutshell, it's as if the state creates the urgency a lot of the times and deorganizes us instead of providing resources where we're able to really thrive. And then when we're asking for remedy, we have to wait endlessly. I'm thinking of a friend of mine, Didier Berry, in front of the Metropolis, 2013, black guy with locks, still to this day, and got beat up by police and had to struggle for about a decade to get justice. But what happened with police around that time, and if you remember around 2013, 2012, student protests, and there was a constant over presence of police everywhere to suppress, and they would not hesitate to do whatever they needed to do. So it's that them acting super fast and expecting of us to be always in Shavasana mode, like, like now, namaste. Yes, we'll believe in the process, type thing. Mm-hmm. So that, I guess, is what is the underlying thing that I want to challenge. And I'm thinking of, for instance, Abisai Cruz, killed by police last year, and then several months later, Nouran Rezai. It took 10 seconds for them. Even though Robida came out, Pascal Robidas from Radio-Canada took on the police narrative by saying it took about a minute, which is still crazy, which reminds us of the police intervention that led to the murder of Freddy Villanueva in 2008. It really, when we see the footage, took about 10 seconds. So again, provoking the situation, and expecting of us to believe what will follow, and expecting of us some form of passive stance. And less than about a few months later, if not a month, Minister Yann Lafrenière, Minister de la Sécurité Publique, goes into the same territory where Nouran Rezai was murdered and announces funding for community organizations of about $150 million. As if to launder the rage that ensued from the death of Nouran. So,
yeah, that investigations move quickly in certain situations, and they move a lot slower in other situations, or they take a lot of time to even begin. You talk about the Nouran Rezai inquiry that was called. Announced months later, months later.
Yeah, exactly. You summed it up. You summed it up very, very, very well. There's this selective political indignation. Mm-hmm. So if the Minister Jean Boulet, Minister of Labor Jean Boulet, who has been complicit to numerous decisions that are suspicious in regards to the workers of unions and so on, if people are tapping into their imagination and creativity in a protest on la Journée nationale du travail, to say we're done. We don't agree with what you're doing, and then he's filing a complaint, which leads to a police investigation. A few weeks after, we're like, okay, so that doesn't make. You're trying to derail the real issue that people are putting forward. Even though you have some form of immunity, you should not be immune to what the decisions that you're causing as a politician.
Yeah. Yeah, your piece kind of talks about like using the time and forcing patients to kind of hopefully the issue will kind of not be as serious as front of mind if you're kind of hoping to wait it out kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about police body cams because that's something that's come up ever since this case out of Montréal-Nord. So Mayor Soraya Martinez-Ferrada has said that her and Domestic Security Minister Yann Lafrenière are going to speed up the deployment of police body cams for the SPVM. And this is despite the fact that there were reports and pilot projects done by the SPVM and Montreal City Hall that were either inconclusive or that concluded that body cams have little impact on interventions and would be extremely costly. A lot of studies have thrown into question the effectiveness of police body cams, yet they seem to loom large in like the public's imagination of what a solution could look like to police misconduct. Why do you think that is, and what is your take on body cams?
We keep on going back to body cameras from, I guess, multiple reasons. We live in some form of spectacle age where we think we need to see the harm to believe that harm happened, not thinking that the person that would wear the camera would not necessarily focus on the behavior of the person wearing the camera, but focus on the person who's in front being sometimes legitimately agitated. So for me, I think that we have a lot of footage from people, bystanders, that show us a lot of information, and for which we keep creating gaslighting. We keep second guessing what's in front of us, what the footage that we already have access to, and then taking arguments from Alec Karakatsanis' books, Propaganda. We've seen that in the jurisdictions where body cameras were implemented, it hasn't really led to more accountability from police forces. And just all the what is around dealing with these database of footage, the externalization of the servers that where the footage would be hosted, all of the funding that it takes to and the expertise to deal with this footage. I think police forces don't yet. They're already paid too much to produce chaos. That I don't think providing more resources for them to wear body cameras that have not proven to push the needle further to restoring people's trust is going to be helpful for us. And I think it's just a blatant lack of collective creativity that politicians have contributed to when they're saying, well, maybe now is the time for body cameras. And why isn't there space for things such as, let's have the names of the police officers that were involved. Let's have that walk of shame culture get back in, and the names and faces of these people during and after the investigation, because they haven't respected the social contract that they had towards the populations, and then a bunch of other measures such as tutelle. A few years ago, under Chief of Police Pichet, police were there was corruption allegations found. It came up to a point where journalists were under surveillance, Patrick Lagacé and so on, and people were like, our journalists. And there wasn't the same level of care and concern for racialized people that I've been saying, and indigenous people that I've been saying for years, that they don't feel safe around police. They feel surveilled. Well, what about the surveillance of their cell phones and so on? So it's just to say that there are way other things to ask before asking for body cameras and for commission d'enquête, just as we've asked prior and already. Let's be more creative and try to have the same diligence that we've had for Jean Boulet, for instance, or for other types of indignation. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that people kind of think of body cam as being like a sort of like neutral observer in this interaction between a police officer and a civilian. But I can't help but think about like, well, where the camera is placed, it's the perspective of the police officer,
100.
right? So can it really be a neutral observer in that kind of situation?
And exactly. And then if there was a pilot project put in and that hasn't been conclusive, so who would we be experimenting on? Would it be, let's imagine the 16 police officers that were found to collect trophies out of people's hair that would experiment with this technology? What would be the strategic neighborhoods where these technologies would be implemented? I just think the mayor and the prime minister should really take into account what research has said, what the concern have said for years, and also community groups should go back to the drawing board and see where were their initial stances in regard to police violations. For instance, I remember at the time when I started mobilizing in Montreal-Nord after the murder of Freddie Villanueva. Montreal-Nord Republic at the time a few years after came up with eight asks after there was the SPVM research by Charret and Courcy that came out. And in that research, we understood that there was a database of about 10,000 names of people, we can imagine Black people, in the database of police. We were like, can you reveal? Like, if it's unethical, can you erase these names, or can you, because these people are more surveilled than others if they're in a database. Also, one of the asks was for l'interdiction de la présence de l'escouade Eclipse. Eclipse, which was a squad put in place to deter and prevent and arrest gang members. There was also, on demandait l'interdiction de la présence de l'escouade Eclipse, like you can no longer be there in Montreal-Nord. But the first ask was on demandait de mettre sous tutelle le SPVM. What is it in English?
Third-party management.
Yeah, and we were also asking for the recognition of the principle that as long as there'll be social and economic injustice, there will be social insecurity. Because we're hearing the Robidas and so on say Montréal-Nord is a poudrière. What do you mean when you keep saying that and repeating that? Who's putting the poudre and who's putting the match? Like, what are you talking about? You're creating that narrative.
How many of those demands were met? How many were?
There were different sets of demands from 2008, then again 2010, and then later on. And me going back mentioning that is that I feel like sometimes community organizations, for numerous reasons such as funding and dependency on when you're on kind of life support. You started out as a movement that nobody was really paid. Everybody was younger, and everybody mobilized at some point, used their genius and then time to mobilize. But then we got institutionalized, like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, where we kind of depend on these fundings, and then we become timid on what the youth really need. And we tend to say to the youth, don't be mad, don't be angry, it'll happen, trust us, come in the family picture now. Take a picture with us, because our livelihoods depend on them remaining legitimate, sometimes targets for authorities. And that, I think, is a pervasive dynamic for which we have yet to find real media time or just off-screen time to really challenge and amongst us. Just coming here today, I had in my DMs this community organization that wasn't too happy about what I left under the comment of the event happening, that will happen in a few days, where I was questioning how can community organizations that have partnered with police help us fight police brutality. And it was like, oh, don't create la zizanie. I'm like, well, isn't there some form of zizanie happening right now amongst police forces that forces these types of revelations to come out? So if within community organizations we can challenge our practice and ethics, how will we improve? So I know your question, which is a very important one, is how many of these recommendations were applied? I'd say close to none. When Montreal-Nord Republic, that was the group before Hoodstock, which some of them created this community organization, becoming Hoodstock, first came about after the riots on August 10th, 2008, stemming from the murder of Freddie on the eve. Their first demands on Montreal-Nord Republic, one of them was the resignation of the mayor, which happened a couple of times after. He was also, he had a very good retirement. It was good. It was super good. So some recommendations tend to, but they're still, I think, all relevant to some extent. The data collecting that is happening, we want transparency on this data, such as the database, and so on and so on. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
So the CAQ government continues to deny the existence of systemic racism. Last week or this week, Christopher Skeet, who is the minister responsible for the fight against racism, told Le Devoir that for him, this discussion on systemic racism is semantics. And he said, ça nous enlève la chance de travailler sur le racisme.
Why? How is he working on racism? Ça nous enlève la chance. Quel plaisir de travailler sur le racisme. He's part of producing racism. He's a racialized being that has said a couple months ago, to not say about a year ago, that it is a sad first for Quebec to apply IRCAs, to apply impact on race and culture and assessment pre-sentential reports, which are basically some form, if not exact equivalent of GLADU reports, that aims to challenge the over representation of indigenous people, in the case of IRCAs, Black people in the justice system. This minister, Black minister, says that after a Superior Court decision saying that they took into consideration these reports, IRCAs, he said it's a sad first for Quebec. He is the sad first for Quebec, this minister. So they're not legitimate. But your question again was, sorry, I got all.
No, but that's good. I was going to ask you, why do you think there's this persistent denial or refusal to acknowledge the existence of systemic racism?
As long as language will be centered, full frontal, the main issue on the drawing board, we won't have to tackle the racial contract that allows for the subjugation of indigenous people, Black people, racialized people, Muslim people, poor people. Everything will remain in status quo as long as we keep thinking that the main issue is the potential loss of the rights of linguistic minority in the country, but majority in the province. And then that's what I'm thinking about. Is it cultural? Is it political? It leads to a bunch of other questions as to we're now facing a first where demographically speaking, the people that are dying are more than the people coming into this world in Quebec.
Yeah.
And there's this anxiety about will Mike disappear. There are places where in Shawinigan where you can imagine folks coming together and with masks and saying we want a Quebec Blanc. 2026. It's not 1946. We're talking 2026. And the same minister, Prime Minister Christine Fréchette, that says we should condemn this. This is troubling. Well, she hasn't put out a full investigation like they're doing on Jean Boulet, because of Jean Boulet, who felt that his image was not treated as should be. So I think this is all kind of connected. I know we started off with Montréal-Nord, 16 police officers being displaced and so on, but I can't help but not connect to the social context into which we are in this province. When there's a La Presse June 20th, 2021 article saying that about 84% of police officers of the Montreal police don't live in Montreal.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means that we're in occupied territory. It's an armed force. It's an armed force. How do you say that?
Yeah, exactly. An armed force. Yeah, a military force or something. Maybe I should say that. But
well, I mean, 84% of those that patrol and say they're here to serve and protect don't sleep here. So they go into these neighborhoods, just as we've seen in the inquest of the causes and circumstances of Freddy Villanueva. And it was revealed that how Jean-Louis Lapointe was trained, or Stéphanie Pilote, the officer that was with Jean-Louis Lapointe, who ended up shooting Freddy Villanueva, how they were trained. They were young police officers, by the way. They were trained to think that they were coming into the Bronx. They weren't sleeping in the Bronx. They were doing their day shift or night shift in the Bronx. The quote-unquote fabricated Bronx that they had in mind. So everybody could potentially be seen as a potential threat, just as what other interveners that the Rover has spoken to as described. No matter if you're wearing jeans or, flip-flops, or your hair is a certain type of way, if you're Black, you might be a potential walking threat. Thinking of what Dardia from La Clinique Juridique Saint-Michel has articulated.
In the case of Station 39 in Montréal-Nord, a lot of these officers were young and new officers. Other political commentators have already pointed out that fact, and that it doesn't bode well for SPVM chief Fatty Dagger's apparent supposed efforts to bring in a culture change, right? The connection that I make is with the rise in right-wing extremism, particularly among young white men, right? What are your thoughts on that, on the supposed culture change at the SPVM, and what this case kind of means about the rise of fascism, frankly.
On March 24th, 2011, I sat in a Haitian restaurant for about an hour and a half with Fadi Daguerre. We ate together. And how did that come about? At the time, I believe he was Directeur de Division des Communautés Culturelles under Marcel Parent's leadership, ex-Chief of Police. So that was before his days in Longueuil, and then after him becoming Chief of Police here in Montreal. So around that time, 2011, 3 years after the murder of Freddy Villanueva, I was part of the co-creation of Hoodstock, affiliated with Montreal-Nord Republic. I was a young dude with a lot of energy and challenging everybody, whether we're militants or whether we're, we're church-going folks. I was like nobody I thought had monopoly on truth and tactics. And at some point in time, I was invited to sign le livre d'or de la ville de Montréal because of some involvement. And then I meet this guy, and already tries to neutralize me with this charm by saying, I'm African because I was born in Ivory Coast. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then we eat. And at some point, he's like, so let's see how we can collaborate. I have some announcement that I'll be making soon. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, but you know that I work with folks that don't trust any of that because your colleague is a murderer. I was talking about Jean-Louis Lapointe. He almost choked into his drink. And it was like, you're talking about my colleague. Well, I said, well, I don't know if he had already elevated this police officer in the SWAT team, which is a tactical, it's just a promotion. You kill the youth and then you get promoted. And then I said, that's what we believe, that's what we stand for. And he kind of went into this half saying truth and half trying to nudge you into his position. That's the big sexy strategy right now. Like when you meet with community, that's a good strategy. That's a big strategy right now. The nudging, the seduction strategy that happens between police forces and community organization, between power and the people that need funding to move forward. That's something that you could not do with at the time Montréal-Nord République or other groups, because we did not seek a paycheck from we sought justice first. And so he tells me, well, there's going to be some announcement, but I have to be, and then here goes the half truth that I wanted to talk about. He says, right now there are factions. That's 2011. There are factions within the police forces. Some want the change, some don't want it. And we're trying to create a culture where it is possible. So go to fast track to your question. When he's saying that now is the time, that it wasn't that I needed, now I don't know, sense that there's systemic racism. It is so intense that I had to come out and tell you about this 3-month investigation, which by the way, came at the same time where he was announcing a 5-year strategic plan. So help me understand how, at the same time that you're saying we'll be launching a 5-year plan as to where the SPVM is supposed to go, closer to communities, you're also launching an investigation on these allegations of hair collecting as trophies. But then you come out in June saying that we've now acted upon the information that came about. So you left these police officers to still interact with folks for all of that time? And to go back to 2011. So you already knew that by 2011, there were members of your forces that potentially did not feel safe with the practice of their colleagues. So what did you do then? We need, if we were going to go commission d'enquête, we need to go all the way back and also understand where Yann Lafrenière, who's now the Ministre de la Sécurité Publique, stood at the time, where he was also responsible for communications within the SPVM, and then moved on in the machine. So all of these people are like cousins. They know one another. I went back to that context to say that I'm no longer charmed by Fadzi, soft skin looking, Richard Gere vibe-ish, shampoo, Alberto Balsam vibes. I'm not, some people are new to the charm. So they're like, oh, maybe we should trust, but they should read the Times. There's an international mechanism called EMLR. It's a mechanism called it's the expert mechanism on law enforcement, that is also called the Floyd mechanism, which stemmed from all of the uprising after the murder of Floyd. That mechanism was created to allow certain state visits by international experts to see how do countries move in regards to their law enforcement. They've done a mission in Brazil, a mission in the United States, and now Canada is on their radar. after the murder of Vanessa Renteria, who's Afro-Colombian and was killed in British Columbia by RCMP police officers, and multiple other signalements, which I've contributed to also doing. So the announcement of Fadi Daguerre does not come in a vacuum. And if we think that the only thing that fills up the room is the trophies of the hair of these Arab and Black people, we're mistaken. We're naive. And we also don't understand the very true nature of police that have created very sophisticated communication departments. You look at the bibliography of that report, which was commandé par le SPVM. There are sources that link you to how sophisticated police forces in big cities have become into communicating. So having a Fadi Daguerre fits right into that strategy. There's going to be turbulence, but we'll have somebody that can appease whatever's going on. And if you're doing that for 16 police officers, suspending them with pay and moving them like pieces on the chessboard, what are you doing after the murder of Abisai Cruz? What are you doing after the murder of Nouran Rezaei? Even if it's Longueuil, it's Montreal police that's still undergoing some investigation on Longueuil police on one of the investigations and so on.
Yeah, the culture seems quite built in to the
Oh yeah,
to the structure, right?
yeah.
So Lafrenière announced an independent observer to follow the investigation. He also hasn't ruled out a public inquiry. We're recording this interview on Thursday the 18th. It's going to be released on Sunday. So as of this recording, the investigation is still in the hands of the SPVM, but Lafrenière has talked about transferring it to the SQ or the BEI, which is the provincial police watchdog. What is the solution in your mind? Where do we go from here?
I think it's a cocktail of solutions. It's not one thing. It's not commission d'enquête and then I can go to my chalet. It's how have we conducted commission d'enquête here in this province? What can we learn from bad practice and good practice? And what do we do in the meantime? So in the meantime, if you want a good deterring tactic is also to reveal, if there's been loss of trust, the names of the concerned police officers. We want to know. We might run into them. If I go to Parc Laurier and I'm just chilling with a squirrel, I don't want to run into this police officer chasing me outside or looking at me intently. So also, why was Christine Black, the mayor of Montreal-Nord, crying? We saw that. Why was she crying? Why? Because she's been informed of malpractice in the past. And her administration votes the budgets of the Station 39. Well, there's some form of accountability that the leadership, the police leadership, has to provide to elected officials. And sometimes that information is not accessible to people. They think they're voting the mayor of a borough, and that's it. And that mayor will help collect garbages and stuff. No, that mayor also has power over how much is done through its repressing body. And I think if in 2008 we've asked for resignations, what should we ask for in 2026? That's the big to inflate the question that you've asked. How do we stop putting Fadi on a pedestal and look at the room and understand that the people controlling the light in the room maybe need to be questioned, the temperature in the room, that makes it so that these behaviors fester. So there's a political element to it that I think I think the conversation and reflection should go towards.
Thank you so much for coming here and meeting with us and talking about this issue.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing.